What's up guys, my name is Ace, and League Play for Black Ops Cold War has now been out for a couple days, and I just wanted to talk about my experience with it so far and share some of my feedback and constructive criticism. The first thing I'll say is I'm glad they actually brought a proper League Play system. It's actually here, you have rankings and everything, unlike last year where all they did was brought the CDL playlist, which allowed you to play with the CDL rule set, but it didn't give you any sort of ranking or any rewards or anything like that. It was just a separate playlist as part of multiplayer. Having said this though, I think there are a lot of glaring issues with the way they've implemented League Play so far. And the number one issue that I have, and this is based on my experience as well as the experience that I've seen from a lot of other people that have been posting this, is the way that they're handling where they decide to place you in your ranking. And with this, I'm not talking about bronze, silver, gold, all of those things. Those are actually separate things that are more so about time played in League Play. I'm talking about the actual skill divisions. So we have Competitor, which is the bottom 50% of players, Advanced, which is in the top 50% of players, Expert, which is top 30%, Elite, which is top 15%, and then finally Master, which is the top 2% of players. And the way this works is pretty standard for any sort of a ranked mode in video games. You play your 5 placement matches to start it off, and in those placement matches, the system should be actively trying to find out where you generally belong in these skill divisions. So once you're done your placement matches, you should be in a division that at least roughly represents your skill level. And therefore from there, after your placement matches, you should then be playing with people that are a roughly similar skill level to you. However, there is a very clear issue with this that I experienced, as well as some pro players even experienced as well, and that is, I won every single one of my placement matches by a large margin. Like, none of my games were even close, and I also held over a 3 kill death ratio in this, and a pretty decent score per minute as well, and yet, after those 5 placement matches, which I absolutely dominated in, I ended up in the lowest skill rank in the competitor division. Similarly, although to a larger degree because he's a pro player, Awakening, somebody that actually plays COD at a professional level, did the same thing. He won all 5 of his placement matches, and he had a 10 KD after those 5 placement matches. I also heard rumors that he dropped a nuke. I don't know for sure if he did drop a nuke, but I've been hearing that he also got a nuke in one of those placement matches, and he also ended up in the competitor skill rank. To top this off, I've been hearing from a lot of people that they only won like 2 of their 5 games in their placement matches, or 3 of their 5 games, and they didn't end up in the competitor ranking. They ended up in a higher skill division than we did with our 5 super easy wins that we absolutely dominated in. Now, the most likely explanation for this is that the people that we were matched against in our placement matches were not very skilled players. They were very low skilled players, and therefore it's not as impressive to beat up on those low skilled players, and therefore it's not worth as much to get a win against them compared to if you were fighting somebody that was a higher skill, even if that higher skill player ended up beating you by a small margin. So in that sense, I do understand it, because the people I was playing against in my placement matches were honestly so much easier than the average player I tend to play against in regular public matches. But the whole point of these placement matches is they're supposed to find out where you belong in the skill ranking. So in order to do this, the best method would be to try and place you against higher skill players and lower skill players to see who beats you and who you're able to beat to determine roughly where you belong when it comes to that. And that's not what I experienced at all. Instead, all it gave me were super easy enemies and super easy games, and therefore, I don't know what I could have done any different to end up in a higher skill rating. I can't control who I end up playing against in those placement matches. I would have preferred playing against much higher skilled players and actually losing a couple of my placement matches if that meant that I ended up in the skill division that I actually belong in. But I can tell you right now, I absolutely do not belong in the competitor division, and this isn't me being cocky or anything. But I played a couple matches after my placement matches, and it was just a stomp fest for me. It's easier playing League Play than it is public matches for me right now. And that's not what I want out of League Play. It might sound strange that I'm complaining about the game being too easy, but there's a big difference between public matches and League Play. When it comes to public matches, yeah, I want a good mix of enemies, I want to play low skill players, I want to play high skill players, and everything in between, because that's what public matches are supposed to be. That's where you go to just do whatever you want to do. You could be completing challenges, or trying as hard as possible, or doing whatever, and just sort of messing around with different setups. Whereas League Play is about competition and challenging yourself and finding out how you stack up against other people in the community. What is your true skill rating? That's what I want to know when playing League Play. And also when playing League Play, I expect really competitive, close matches where not only are my enemies roughly the same skill level as me, but also my teammates are roughly the same skill level. And most of those matches in League Play, I feel should be kind of coming down to the wire. And yet, every single game of League Play I've played so far, it almost feels like I'm reverse boosting playing in them. I haven't experienced any kind of a challenge whatsoever, and it should have figured out my skill ranking by now, and yet it hasn't. So it's got me wondering, how long do I need to play in order to grind myself up to the place where I belong in the skill rating? And I really don't know what the answer to that is. And therefore, I really don't feel like playing any more League Play because it could take me hours or days just to grind my way up until I get into the competitive matches that I'm looking for in League Play. So this was a massive turnoff for me, and unless something really significantly changes with how they handle their skill ranking system, I don't see myself ever going back to League Play. I would love to hop on and just dive right into those nice competitive matches where I'm playing against people that are roughly the same skill level as me, but that's just not the experience that I'm getting out of League Play. Now moving on to some other pieces of feedback and criticism that I wanted to provide here. A lot of this is thankfully stuff that I personally didn't run into yet in my matches that I played so far. The first one is teammates leaving. This is always a big issue in any sort of ranked playlist for any game out there, really. And it's something that I noticed a lot on the enemy teams as I was going through my placement matches. They would very often have somebody leave the game at some point, and then after that, they stood absolutely no chance of coming back and trying to win. And yet when that happens, you get punished for your teammate leaving and you losing that game when it's something that's completely out of your control. And as it is right now, to my knowledge at least, based on what I've been reading online, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong here, there is no proper punishment for leaving a League Play match and screwing over your teammates. Like, yes, you will still lose in your skill ranking, just like you would if you were to lose the game, but as far as I'm aware, you can leave a League Play match and just queue up and search for another match right away, when there should be some sort of a punishment, like you can't search for another match for 10 minutes, for instance. We've had that in the past with League Play systems in Call of Duty, and it's at least a bit of a deterrent for people leaving games. It doesn't completely solve the problem, but it helps the problem, and it seems like it is a pretty big problem at this point where people are very consistently leaving the game. I think out of all the matches of League Play I've played so far, there have only been maybe 1 or 2 where the game finished with all 8 players still in the lobby. Now again, from my perspective, thankfully it was normally the enemy team that had people leaving, and it wasn't my team at all. But that's just the luck of the draw when it comes to that. Now, additionally, when League Play first dropped, the restrictions weren't that great. There were a bunch of things that were just completely anti-competitive, like gas mines, for instance. That completely goes against the whole competitive nature of Call of Duty. But there was a pretty long list of things that just shouldn't have been the case. And I gotta give props for Treyarch, they got on top of this quite quickly. The day after League Play launched, they ended up banning a huge list of these things that shouldn't have been available in a competitive environment. Now, there's still a bunch of things that many people would like to see banned and gone out of the rule set. A lot of things that there's a gentleman's agreement for, but they're still officially allowed in the CDL rule set. For me, I'm not too picky when it comes to that. I think if it's in the rule set, it should be fine. And if anything, they should have to adjust the rule set itself if it really is something that's anti-competitive. But yeah, that's more so an area where I wanted to give props to Treyarch for actually getting on top of that quickly. Overall, though, I've got to say my biggest issue is just going back to the first thing I talked about. The way they handle your skill ranking, I feel it needs to be much more transparent, preferably a visible MMR or ELO score so you can see your actual exact skill rating, as well as the exact skill rating of your enemies and your teammates that you're playing with and against. And also, I feel like this system should be way better at finding out where you belong in your skill ranking. It shouldn't be a really long grind just to end up in the skill division that you belonged in the first place based on your performance. Thinking back to previous rank play systems, I generally felt like after my placement matches, I would end up roughly where I belonged, at least based on my performance in those placement matches. So if I won all of my placement matches, I would expect to be placed in one of the higher ranks. Not necessarily the highest rank, I think you should have to put in some time and grind for that. But at the very least, if you win all of your placement matches, there's no way you should end up in the competitor ranking. That just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. So I really hope they're able to learn from this and better optimize their system for the future, because as of right now, I just don't want to play League Play because of this. Now, one really nice thing that we've been seeing is Vonderhaar has been fairly responsive to a lot of people, and it seems like with some of his tweets, they are going to be open to making some big adjustments in the future. Especially this tweet right here. He said, based on today's thread, it sounds like World War II has the fan favorite system. So it seems like they're at least recognizing that now, although I feel like they should have known that to begin with, especially if they had been talking to the pros while developing this league play system, which it kind of seems like they weren't doing that at all, which is kind of crazy to me. I'm sure all of those pros would have been very happy to be consultants for this league play system as they've been developing it, so they could get it in a good state to start off with, which it currently isn't. So I am really hoping that they are learning a lot from this launch of league play, and they're going to be making some big adjustments. But at the same time, it's kind of frustrating that we've been waiting this long just to get league play in the first place, and it feels like they did it completely wrong. It feels like they're just so out of touch with what the competitive community wanted out of a league play system. But yeah, I think that's enough for today's video. I know there's a bunch of other little nitpicky things that I could bring up when it comes to criticism and feedback, but to me, none of those things really matter when they can't even get the absolute basics of the ranking system right. Now, of course, I do want to hear from you guys in the comment section below. For those of you guys that have played League Play so far, what has your experience been like so far? Are you generally happy with this League Play system, or not so much, and you feel like there's room for a lot of improvement? Just let me know those thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.